and earnest. I never have known if Ray recorded City Lights because he loved the song or because he wanted to shut up Ernest. Laughter followed, maybe just to get Ernest off his back. Bill Anderson never needed attention. His songs always did the talking, and still people whispered Bill Anderson classics that survived generations without fireworks or pop hooks. But in his 80s, he stunned everyone when Anderson publicly accused 5 Opry stars, openly condemning them for what he called a grotesque betrayal of country music. And he did not do it quietly, because behind that calm voice was years of frustration, disappointment, and anger build up as he watched the genre he loved slowly drift away from its core. And what they did, according to Bill, shocked him to the point that he could no longer stay silent. Number 1 on his list was Kenny Rogers, the legend who, in Bill Anderson's eyes, sold country's soul. Because among all the Opry stars Bill Anderson once admired, Kenny Rogers ranked at the very top. And that was exactly why the disappointment cut the deepest, since no name carried more weight across genres than Kenny Rogers. And by the late 1970s, he was no longer simply a country star, but a trusted bridge between tradition and the mainstream, someone Bill Anderson had watched rise from gritty storytelling into a figure welcomed everywhere from the Grand Ole Opry to primetime television. And that trust later turned into quiet hostility, because in interviews during the 2000s, Anderson acknowledged Rogers' talent, but made his frustration unmistakably clear when he said that country music used to tell the truth even when it hurt, and somewhere along the way it started trying too hard to be liked. And the timing of that remark mattered because it followed years of watching Rogers' crossover success reshape the industry, especially when Lady reached number 1 in 1980 and Islands in the Stream dominated the charts in 1983. Moments that proved to Bill Anderson that country music could be polished, softened, and sold without confronting pain, poverty, or consequence. And to him, that was surrender. Because the real damage came after when record labels changed their questions. Songwriters were no longer asked for lift experience, but for repeatable formulas. Heartbreak became vague. Hardship turned decorative. Truth lost urgency. And when Anderson met Rogers, he withdrew, declined potential collaborations, leaned deliberately into traditional songwriting, and released work that emphasized moral weight and narrative consequence. Believing that Kenny Rogers did not dismantle country music out of malice, but demonstrated how profitable it could be to leave its core behind. And once the industry learned that lesson, the door never closed again. Number 2 was G. Brooks, the idol Bill Anderson quietly pushed away. Because when Bill Anderson thought about the Opry stars he once admired most, G. Brooks sat shockingly high at number 2. And that alone made the fallout hard to believe. Since for years Anderson spoke of Brooks with awe and behind closed doors described him as the most commanding performer country music ever produced. A rare compliment from a man known for restraint. Yet as Brooks' influence exploded in the early 1990s, admiration hardened into alarm. Because Bill Anderson was no longer watching a star rise, but watching a genre transform into something he no longer recognized. As country music migrated from quiet rooms and listening ears to football stadiums filled with fireworks, harnesses, smoke, and massive video walls, where fans screamed lyrics they barely absorbed and volume replaced vulnerability. And what unsettled him was not popularity, but what popularity demanded in return, leading Anderson to say in a rare radio interview that country music was not meant to be shouted but meant to be felt, a line that exposed fear rather than nostalgia, because he believed spectacle was overpowering the private emotional exchange that once defined the genre. And as Brooks broke attendance, records executives followed the blueprint aggressively, pushing bigger choruses, louder hooks, simpler emotions, while silence lost value and intimacy became a liability, prompting Anderson to draw quiet boundaries, avoid shared stages, and lean into acoustic performances and lyric-heavy projects as intentional acts of resistance. Number 3 was Taylor Swift, the prodigy who walked away first, because to many it seemed impossible that Bill Anderson once enjoyed listening to her the most. Yet that disbelief marked the fracture, as Swift arrived as a teenage songwriter who articulated heartbreak with clarity far beyond her years, something Bill Anderson noticed immediately, praising her early work privately and believing she represented renewal rather than disruption, until in 2014 she formally exited the country genre. prompting Anderson to say that country music used to be a lifetime commitment, and now it was a resume. A line that traveled fast because it revealed anger disguised as disappointment, as Swift's exit felt to him like a declaration that country music was temporary, a phase to outgrow, turning sacred ground into a stepping stone, devotion into an option, and inspiring younger artists to talk about moving on rather than staying, transforming country music from a destination into a launchpad. And in Bill Anderson's view, once permanence disappeared, identity followed it out the door. Number 4 was Jason Aldean, the hitmaker who hollowed country out, because unlike others he never crossed over to pop or left country behind. And that was the problem. As Bill Anderson became increasingly alarmed by the rise of bro country in the 2000s and 10s, a movement Aldean helped normalize, where beer brands, lifted trucks, tailgates, and dirt roads flooded playlists while emotional consequences vanished, leading Anderson to say they were singing about country life without living it. An accusation rooted in the belief that country music required proximity to hardship, while Aldean's catalog presented rural life as endless celebration, frictionless and hollow, with songs like Dirt Road Anthem symbolizing a shift towards slogans engineered to sell a lifestyle rather than confront reality, sidelining folk roots and lyrical complexity in favor of repetition. And Bill Anderson's response was deliberate refusal, continuing to write about aging, regret, faith, and moral weight, seeing bro country not as growth but erosion wrapped in celebration. Number 5 was Morgan Wallen, the voice that finally broke Bill Anderson's patience. Because while Anderson acknowledged Wallen's raw vocal power and instinctive musicality, he believed ability without responsibility was dangerous. And the breaking point came in 2021 when controversies overshadowed the music, prompting Anderson to say that country music once fought to be respected and now excused behavior it would not have survived before, reframing the issue as a genre-wide tolerance problem, where chaos coexisted with success and integrity became negotiable, something that frightened Bill Anderson more than any stylistic shift, because to him country music was never background entertainment, but something meant to sit with listeners in grief, regret, faith, and endurance. And when controversy drowned out that purpose, the genre lost its center, leaving the question of whether Bill Anderson was protecting country music or refusing to let it grow, and whether these stars changed it for the better.